Good evening and very warm welcome to all of you to a very interesting talk, and that is on Industry 4.0, building a roadmap for successful transformation. By year 2000, the world got into knowledge economy, and that is changing the rules of the game in a big way. Some of the trends which are seen as mega trends, some of the trends are not even visualized. And the point is that the way in which we are conducting our economic affairs, the way in which we are running our industry, the kind of services what we get, they are going to change. And some of them are visible right now, and the invisible is also going to be visible very soon. This has already changed the rules of power play of industries. If you look at Y2K and 2000 onwards, first top 10 industries of Gujarat or India, industry houses, the complexion of industry representation is changing very, very fast. If you look at 93, 92, 93, the kind of industry houses which were ruling the economy in terms of industrial competition, maybe 2 or 3 are there. Rest all are coming quickly, which were not there somewhere in decade of 90s. Now, point is that today we have kept a very interesting subject, and that is Industry 4.0. And this is something which talks about smart factories. If you look at Industry 4.0, how it emerged, the first industrial revolution started with mechanization and tapping the power of steam and mechanical movement. And that was the first industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution came into existence by mass production. That was started by Henry Ford, and he used to say, I will give you cars in all colors, provided it is black. Standardization and mass production. The next wave of industrial revolution came into computerization and automation, which triggered the new revolution of computers and data and all these things what we have seen. Somewhere in 80s, late 80s, see, when we talk about technology and technology utilization, the first mover of new technology utilization are armed forces anywhere in the world. And if you look at what we are looking at today in terms of Industry 4.0, all these elements were used by US Army. If you look at the second Iraq war, first was Iraq-Kuwait war where US participated, but that was also using some of the broadband and some of the kind of GPS techniques and all that. But the full-blown broadband integration, everything was utilized in Iraq war by US Army, where they had a data center in Doha, Qatar, and where we could see live war in our drawing rooms. That was the trigger for German industry somewhere in 2011 to talk about Industry 4.0, creating smart networks, smart factories, using all technological elements of internet, big data, new manufacturing techniques. And the work group was formed at the Hanover Fair in 2011. 2012, the working group worked on the complete report, and in 2013, the report was floated at Hanover Fair, and which was named as Industry 4.0. Essentially, Industry 4.0 is talking about utilizing automation, internet, new manufacturing techniques, big data, all these elements to impact, along with automation, new ways of managing your factory, manufacturing your products, and running your business. And this is a very silent revolution which is taking the entire world over. There has been study by Stanford University about penetration of automation, where automation is going to capture services in terms of automation as high as 70% of services which are being provided. And same penetration level is also going to take place into other manufacturing and other activities. And that is where we have seen right from year 2000 onwards, new business models, new business companies, whether you talk of Amazon, you talk of Google, you talk of Twitter, you talk of Facebook. These are all new wave, new generation businesses which are talking of data, which are talking of internet, which are talking of analytics, artificial intelligence. So what is the sum total of this? It is going to improve productivity as high as 50% plus and drop the cost as low as 50% lower than what is there today. And that is where we are extremely delighted to have Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, who is a creative, effective technocrat. Welcome, Ganesh, this evening. It is our pleasure to have him. And I would request our council member, Sawan Godiawala, to come and offer our floral greetings to Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. Sawan. Welcome, Ganesh. I would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, who is Executive Chairman and founder of 5F World, which is a very innovative platform which talks about skills, startups, social ventures in the country and also beyond country. He is also Chairman of Global Talent Track, a pioneer in employability skills training in Asia. Ganesh has pioneered some of the iconic businesses in India and taken them to commanding heights of success. One of them was Aptech, which is a training organization which has got presence not only in India but all over the world. At the same time, he had privilege to be CEO and Vice Chairman of Janser Technology, a global software success story which is being written into business schools and all over. Till 2016. And since then, he wanted to chart a new path for himself, and that is where his new organization, that is 5F World, comes in. His industry responsibilities include as chairman of NASSCOM, one of the prestigious information technology business forum, also president of HBS Club of India, member of the National Council of CII. He is a global board director of Social Venture Partners and governor of SVP Pune. So he is a multifaceted, multi-activity oriented, creative technocrat. And if I look at IT industry and the evolution of IT industry, I mean, the years where he started all these organizations. See, for any businesses, you need inputs, and these are to be good quality inputs. IT industry had one major drawback when they started their industry, and that was skill set of people to run their businesses. And the kind of visionary step forward what they took as an industry at NASSCOM and also in their individual industries in terms of training and preparing people, and the way in which to handhold such people to become successful in their, in their profession and building the success of organization itself shows the kind of mettle what he has got, and he had privilege to be president of NASSCOM. He has written number of books. At the same time, he has been honored with lot of awards and recognitions. So in all, we have a very interesting person today, this evening, who is going to talk to us on Industry 4.0. Welcome, Ganesh. Floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yatindra. I think a lot of learnings in my own life has been by interactions with Mr. Sharma here. So it's a real privilege to have him introduce me to this audience. As Mr. Nair here knows, I have come to AMA many times. In fact, this is probably the third or fourth time I'm talking to members of the AMA. So it's always a very special privilege for me to come back to this forum. And that too on a topic which is very close to my heart. As Yatindra rightly said, after many years in skills and running a software exports company, Zensar, which is, today one of the higher valued companies and obviously $500 million in revenue, I decided that the opportunity was absolutely right to focus again on India. And in fact, when we started 5F World, a lot of people asked me, why is this complicated word called 5F World? But 5F actually stands for our mantra, which is fast, focused, flexible, friendly, and fun. Because our belief is, in a country where all of us get very depressed by watching the 9 p.m. debates on television, okay, we go to sleep very angry, we get up in the morning extremely angry, we believe there needs to be some lightening up of people saying, let's make this country truly great. And we are fortunate to have a Prime Minister Modi, who is obviously doing a lot of things. There's a huge agenda. This is a tough country to solve all problems. So what we do in 5F World is really pitch into that. And we really say that, look, anything which helps Indians, not only Indians as citizens, but Indian businesses, the government in some way, which is where NASSCOM is, that's what we try and do. And more important, we believe that, this is the land of entrepreneurs. And I know that AMA itself has a outstanding entrepreneurial development and education program, that we believe that multiple entrepreneurs, not just people like Flipkart, but many, many micro entrepreneurs who are looking at new areas of technology, new ways of solving people problems, either in the social sector or manufacturing or services, are required for this country to go to 10, 12% growth. And that's what we're trying to do. Now, in that context, in fact, I'll just touch upon one thing that Mr. Sharma said, which is this whole area of skills. And if you look at our industry, the industry I came from, I started off as an industrial engineer, moved on to IT, and today I'm again in this intersection of IT and industrial engineering, which is Industry 4.0. But the big issue, which he rightly said in the 90s, was skills. Today, if you look at the technology industry, okay, whether it is, Gujarat companies like E-Infochips or Dev IT or so many other GCR companies in IT, or whether it is Tata Consultancy Services or Infosys or middle tier companies like Tech Mahindra, Zensar, it's still skills. And why is it still skills? Today we have 1.8 million engineers graduating every year. But the problem is technology keeps changing. And today when we talk about new technology, it's all about digital. And which is why if you look at NASSCOM recently announced their Future Skills program, and that was to ensure that if today there are 40 lakh young people working in the technology industry. When I started my career, there were 40,000. But in this huge population of existing people, average age of 27, 28, and a very big aspiring set of engineers, computer technologists, etc., all these we believe need something which is digital. So one of the things I'll talk about, in fact, I'll break my talk into 4 very quick parts, and then we can, even at the end of each part, I'm going to ask you for questions, if you have any questions. And then we'll, of course, have more questions at the end, if required. But I'm going to cover it in 4 parts. One is digital. In this room, I'm sure all of us think we know everything about digital. But I do want to get some consensus on what does digital, whether digital India, digital transformation, digital whatever, what does it really mean for people who are entrepreneurs or people who are in industry? And it doesn't matter whether you're running the company or a part of the company. What does digital mean? So we'll do that. Then I'll talk a little bit about Industry 4.0. Some of the points that Mr. Sharma made are very valid. And just to set the context, I'll talk about some challenges for India. Why is it that a Germany or a Europe or even China is adapting to Industry 4.0 very, very fast? And what is stopping us? So what is the Indian challenge, which is what, as I said, my interest area. And finally, I'll end with that, look, if any of you in your companies really wanted to get started with Industry 4.0, what are those first few practical steps you should take? So this is broadly the agenda, and probably it's already close to 7. So I'll try and finish this with interactions in about half an hour to 35 minutes, which still gives us, for those of you who would like to stay on, I'm here, we can answer all questions. So let me start by asking you the first question. What does the word digital mean to you? Anybody? You never thought I'm going to ask you questions, right? You said I'll ask. Yes, sir. Virtual. Give me more words that come to you. When I say digital, what does it mean? Sorry? Computer data. Sorry? Information bytes is also information technology, sir. So what is so special about digital? What's happening with this thing called digital that we're all getting so excited? Prime Minister Modi announces Digital India. Everything's happening. Yes, sir. No interaction with human beings. That sounds dangerous here. Are you sure? I'll give you one example, which I was telling Yatindra before we started. I do a lot of work in China. And I remember 5 years back, I went to the factory of a company called ZTE, which is one of the large Cisco type of companies. And they took me to the factory in a place called Shenzhen in southern China. And it was an amazing factory. I mean, you had almost 4,000 Chinese women, all with their heads down, no tea breaks, no coffee breaks, building these populating microcircuits, the circuit breakers. Recently, about 6 months back, I went back to the same factory. The 4,000 people, or the 4,000 women, had actually shrunk to 250 women. The output from the ZTE facility, same facility, has gone up almost 2.5 times. And in addition to this 250 women, there are 2,000 small robots in that company. And the reason I mention this is, it's not that there are no people, but each of those women is managing 10 robots. So the whole skills of that woman who was just populating circuit boards has changed to managing an army of robots. So imagine, that is it's almost that is what Industry 4.0 is. What we call the cyber-physical marriage. There are still physical aspects to manufacturing. There are a lot of, as you said, friction-free or no human intervention. How do you put those together and make magic happen? And I've almost come to the last slide, so I should come back to the beginning. So let's talk about digital a little bit. Why is digital important? I mean, the slides are anybody who wants can have the slides, so I won't talk about each of these slides. But the reason why digital is important is all those reasons. I mean, you're talking about a new generation. Many of you are young people in this room. You are what we call digital natives. I mean, for you, using a smartphone is second nature. I mean, I saw this wonderful video sometime back, which one of my friends showed me. A little 1.5-year-old child in America, who was actually given a book by his father, because we all like to give picture books to our children. And you can actually see that child on the picture doing this. He's trying to expand the picture. Because he's so used to the smartphone where you can expand, you can do this. And after some time, the child gets disgusted with the book and throws it away. And he's asking his father for the phone. This is what we call a digital native. So young people are very used to digital technology. If you look at the other points on this slide, data. I mean, we all talk about data. Facebook talks about data. We worry about Indian data going to America. But data, communications, new devices, new smartphones, this is one of the reasons why digital is really exploding. Another reason, adoption of technology. Adoption of technology is moving much, much faster than we have ever imagined. If you look at the one on the top, the telephone took 75 years to reach 1 million people. A little game called Angry Birds, which is at the bottom, took 35 days to reach 1 million users. How is it moving so fast? Because of the internet, the World Wide Web, the fact that things are proliferating so fast. I mean, all of you know about the problems we have in India. The lynch mobs, everything created by WhatsApp, a lot of negative connotations to that. But the point is that data and information are spreading extremely fast to a much larger number of people because of digital. So my next question. If that is what digital is, I mean, digital is all these communication technologies, data, etc., what is the benefit of digital to a company? It doesn't matter whether you're running a manufacturing company or not. So assume for a minute that you're running a company, 400 employees, manufacturing something, doing something in India, exporting something. What can digital transformation do to help your company? Yatindra already mentioned a few things. Just asking you, what comes to your mind? What is the benefit to a company of digital? Yes, sir. Reduce the cost. Anything else that comes to your mind? Efficiency, cost, same thing. Yeah. Okay, you're only talking about reduce. Say some increase, guys. Speed up what? That's also reducing time. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Reach to customers very, very quickly. And so? Okay. What else does it do for your interaction with customers? Digital? Okay. In what sense? Customer experience. Okay, imagine, one of my big clients when I was running Zensar was this company called John Lewis in UK. And we used to do this. After digital, what is the vision of John Lewis? John Lewis, if any of you have been to London, these huge stores where they have home equipment, extra. And they were saying, our vision is that nobody will do buying in the store. They'll come to the store. I mean, they'll probably come to the store to see a fashion show, and they'll have their smartphones and they will click all the time. But the experience is such that they will like what they see, and then they can go back and do purchasing. They can do it from their computer. They don't need to come and wait in line and use a credit card. Anything can happen from anywhere. So today what's happening in digital is, and that's the point I wanted to make, if you look at the bottom there, improving the experience that customers have is probably the most important aspect of digital. Also, what you talked about, enhancing the experience, velocity, you talked about cost, etc., which is all those middle part, okay, which is all those areas of productivity improvement. You talked about cost reduction, faster, quicker, etc. So productivity improvement, increasing the joy of the experience for customers, and finding new business models. Because of digital, can you do something completely different as an entrepreneur, which you could not do without technology? Any examples? Any examples of a born in digital business model or a business that you can think of? All of you use Uber here. If you look at Uber, you look at Airbnb, you look at Facebook, all these are born in digital. What is common between all of them? They don't own anything. Uber does not own a single car. Airbnb does not own a single hotel room. Facebook does not own only any content. They're just taking something from somebody, giving it to somebody, but doing it so fast and with such a good experience that you feel, wow, it's a new business model. So the biggest value of digital has been that it's creating a completely new way of doing business which didn't exist before. So when somebody comes and talks to you about digital and say, oh, digital is about big data, sensors, mobile technology, cloud computing, theek hai, that's technology. Technology is a commodity. But what digital is actually doing is the second piece, which is what you can see there, everything as a service, the social matrix, big data. So providing you better, faster, cheaper methods of accessing what you want and resulting in better productivity, better customer experience, and new business models. So keep this as your single mantra when people say digital. Any questions at this point? This is the end of my first part. Actually, I'll do 4 parts. So this is what you must remember about digital. Now let's move to Industry 4.0. Because of digital, all industries are being impacted. Now, if you think about it, you'll find that the most logical industry to be impacted is where there is a lot of interaction with the customer. So oil and gas, where there's very little interaction with the customer, logically is the lowest impact of digital. And if you look at travel, you look at tourism, you look at the media, that's obviously the biggest impact of digital. I mean, a lot of people, my daughter, for instance, does not buy newspapers. She does not have a television at home. She lives in New York. Because she says, look, whatever I want, I will get on the internet. I don't want to read what somebody gives me in the New York Times or what CNN tells me is the news. I will decide what news to consume. And that generation is completely changing the way information is consumed. So that's why I said, if you look at all those, tourism, telecom, media, and retail banking, And as you go down, utilities, I mean the electricity supply organization, they'll also experience digital, but at a much lower pace. So this is really what's happening. This one, Yatindra has already talked about, so I won't bore you with this. But this is the evolution. When Industry 1.0, end of the 18th century, was all about the Industrial Revolution. Industry 2.0 was where we started having energy. I mean, it wasn't manual anymore. Electric energy, the Henry Ford example of the first assembly lines for Ford Motor Company. Then we got the Industrial Revolution. Electronics and IT made things happen. And when we say Industry 4.0, he rightly said that, look, it was actually started, and the World Economic Forum last year talked about it in a big way. GE introduced something called the Industrial Internet, which actually became the first avatar or first version of Industry 4.0. And it's based on what I said earlier, cyber physical systems. Are you with me so far? How do you use the power of the internet and cyber technologies? At the same time, how do you re-engineer your physical systems? And that together creates magic. How does it happen? These are the building blocks, technologies we kind of talked about earlier. So you have things like sensors and advanced robotics. I mentioned robots. I mean, we all think of something very heavy as robots. Today there are even home robots. I mean, there is this company in Mumbai that we are investing in, which is making robots for children, which is intelligent robots which will learn what the child wants and be their companion. And there are the big industrial robots. So sensors, and a sensor can actually capture any data anywhere in the environment, in the shop floor, I mean, as it happens. I'll give you an example of sensors. One of the big implementations we did was for an insurance company. It's called Discovery Health in Johannesburg in South Africa. And they have a chain of fitness centers, which is called Vitality. And the sensor implementation we were talking to them about is that imagine if you're going to a gym. I mean, all of you, or many of you will go to health clubs. And they said that, look, when the car is parked, and let's say he has to walk maybe 50 steps, during that time, we'll capture his phone data. We will capture his medical records if he's allowing us to access. When he enters the gym, the receptionist says, welcome, Mr. Sharma. Here is your customized plan that we can give you. I mean, you have a small cardiac problem, so you can use treadmill for so much, and here's your plan. And he says, how did you know all this? As soon as you got out of your car, we know who you are. Now you could argue that the privacy guys will say, oh my God, this is not allowed. It's unfair. Arnab Goswami will scream on Republic TV saying, ye kaise ho sakta hai, and all that stuff. But my theory on this is, sooner or later, every citizen of every country will have to decide, do you want customized marketing? Like my daughter says, you better know who I am and only give me news I want to read. Or you say that, look, I will be a hermit. I will not be on Facebook. I will not be on WhatsApp. I will not do anything. Don't interfere with me. The prediction is that 95% of us don't really mind. You use my data. Okay, it's not all that great. I mean, how many people send me WhatsApp messages? I don't think it's very confidential. Some people think it's confidential. Don't get me wrong. But once you are able to put it out in the world, digital can stitch it together into customized formats much faster than anybody else. So that's what sensors do. They capture data from wherever it's happening. And obviously in Industry 4.0, I'll come back to that. Sensors can capture literally anything that's happening on the shop floor and integrate it into your production system. We'll come back to that. Additive manufacturing is a big thing. As all of you know, any idea why we call it additive manufacturing? 3D printing, additive manufacturing. There's somebody who immediately knows all the answers. Huh? Sorry, say that again? Absolutely. So what is normal manufacturing? Correct. So just think about it. I mean, we don't think about it enough. If you look at normal manufacturing, I mean, any of you who are engineers will know that. If you go to a carpentry shop, you're taking a piece of wood and chipping away the wood to make what you want. If you go to any machine shop, I mean, the lathe is really chipping away material and creating something. Additive manufacturing is zero waste, which means you're using new materials to say that, look, we will generate what is required. So tomorrow, if he wants a tool to be created or a spare part to be created, we were just talking about that, you can create it using new fiber materials. That's additive manufacturing. And that's a complete change in the way you think about manufacturing as against subtractive or reducive manufacturing. Augmented reality, and I won't get into that. I mean, augmented reality is all about being able to visualize something. Like even in the social sector, okay, we run a number of skill centers in Pune. And for let's say a young woman who comes in who wants to be trained to become a geriatric care person, or let's say a paramedic. How we do it is, look, I mean, we tell her that, look, you have to take blood pressure, you have to do all this. And she says, "Nare baap re, mujhe hospital nahi jana hai. No, hospital is scary." So we actually let her use virtual reality goggles, headsets, and we transport her into the hospital, and she suddenly sees somebody that looks like her, who's taking a pulse, and she says, "Oh, if this person can do it inside Jahangir Hospital in Pune, I can also do it." So we're actually using digital technology to train young slum women on how to be more confident about what they can do. I'm just saying that's the kind of scope of these technologies. If you look at the fourth one, which is simulation. Simulation, as you know, is everything. I mean, today most aircraft pilots are trained using simulators. We have been talking, in fact, Mr. Sharma and I were talking before we started, that even training of people on highly mechanized or highly automated shop floors can be done by simulation. So you can actually have a simulator training which happens before the person is actually managing the robots or the manufacturing execution systems on the shop floor. Horizontal and vertical integration, what does it really mean? As I said, horizontal is typically where you're gathering all the data from the manufacturing facility. Vertical integration is when it goes into your production planning, your sales management, your inventory control process. And this integration is made possible thanks to what you said earlier, information technology. That information can flow everywhere, so that's important. Industrial IoT, I mentioned this earlier. Internet of Things is nothing but having these sensors and beacons everywhere, which can capture data, feed it in dashboards, so everybody can use. In fact, the best examples of industrial IoT is what they call self-healing machines. I mean, we used to worry about when do I have to maintain this machine, etc., etc. But a lot of machines now have the inherent capability to heal themselves. So you capture the data that, look, some motor is making some noise, and you can feed it back and correct the motor while it is in motion. In fact, if I ask you a question which will kind of bring this out, GE, I kept saying GE. What is GE's biggest production where they have maximum market share? Anybody? Motors, aircraft engines, for instance. So GE's own vision is, I mean, if you talk to the previous CEO, Jeff Immelt, and he said, look, a day will come when we will not sell aircraft engines at all. So what will he sell? Exactly. So he will sell uptime of aircraft engines, which means you'll get the aircraft engine free when if you're, let's say, Jet Airways and you're buying 100 Boeings, he won't charge you for that. But he will say that, look, every year you pay me. If I give you 99.7% uptime, you pay me X. If I give you more, you pay me X plus 1. And if I give you less, you pay me less. What is he doing? He's guaranteeing the service quality, and he's ensuring that he uses all this technology to make the aircraft manufacture more successful. So that's one big thing that's happening here. Cloud, we've all heard of, I'm sure. Today, everything is served up from the cloud, which really means that a day will come when nobody will ever buy a computer again. It's like electricity. I mean, when AMA decided that electricity was required in this hall, the first thing they did was not to go out and buy a power plant. They just said, okay, we'll connect whoever is the electricity provider and we'll install all these lights and switches, and there we are. So same thing will happen with information. Information will happen, it'll be available on tap, which means that Amazon or Google or Microsoft will host it somewhere in a data center, and you will just avail the information service properly sliced and diced. Big data and analytics is important. So if anybody has heard of analytics, what it really means is all this data that's flowing at us, okay, especially in manufacturing companies. The biggest use of data is, like again, I'm asking you to imagine, let's say you're a production manager of a company. At the end of the month, what data do you think you require? What is the data you require if you're a production manager of a company? I'm just asking a very simple question. There's no trick in the question. Anybody? Output, how much did I produce last month, etc., etc. Anything else you think you require? Inventory, production, then? Little louder. Input materials, what materials went in, what materials came out. Anything else that comes to your mind? Quality, how many rejects and so on and so forth. What else? How much waste was created. See, if you think about everything you're telling me, it falls into what they call descriptive analytics, which means all post-mortem. What happened last month? That's your classic analytics. So today people are saying, it no longer matters to me what happened last month. What is important to me is, what can I do at 20% better efficiency next month? That's a difference in analytics between descriptive and what they call predictive and prescriptive analytics. So how can you predict what can happen next month? Not possible, right? Forecasting. This is where something called artificial intelligence comes in. Because the AI, if you have AI embedded into your production planning systems, AI is analyzing all the data. What happened? What was the cause and effect relationship? What happened 6 months back? If this cause is going to happen, let's say, for instance, there's an election coming up in a state, they can automatically predict what's going to happen. I was working on some very basic systems for predictive analytics, I remember, way back, I'm talking about 30 years ago, for this company called Lakme. All of you know Lakme. And Lakme had this big question once, because why is it that every year more red lipstick is sold in June and July in North India than the rest of the country? Why do you think so? All the girls here? Why is more red lipstick sold in June and July in North India than any part of the year or any other part of the country? Sorry? Wedding season. It's pretty obvious, right? And it took like 5 IIM Ahmedabad MBAs to figure out kya ho raha hai idhar. You can see this. So I'm just giving a very stupid example, but I'm saying, like this, the cause and effect relationships are so many that people miss it. But an AI, what they call an AI bot, or machine language is what we call it now, can make prediction happen. So the biggest benefit of Industry 4.0 today is when you can actually make this thing happen in a predictive manner. What is prescriptive? Prescriptive, if any of you are on Amazon Prime or you buy books on Amazon, you will find that, look, when you go and buy a book on Amazon, immediately something will pop up and say, people like you bought these other 4 books also. So the guys are just fooling you, man. Because they've already got that stock of that book in the warehouse near Ahmedabad. They're kind of pushing you to buy that other book, so they're optimizing their production planning and distribution systems. So by prescribing to you, they're making their life easier. So you have to also be careful about all the tricks that people play. Okay? And which leads you to the last point, which is the 8th point here, cybersecurity. Are you living in a secure environment? And it can be very scary. Your data is available out there. Okay. In fact, I remember when, any of you heard of IBM Watson? What is IBM Watson? What is it? It's a large computer? It's not. It's software. It's not a large computer, because when we think IBM, we immediately think of large computer rooms. It's just a set of what they call APIs, which is programming interfaces, but it is cognitive. It kind of guesses what you will do, and it's predictive. I had a meeting 2 months back in Bangalore with the IBM Watson team. It was a 1-hour meeting, okay? And I noticed during the meeting that there were 3 people sitting at the back and taking notes and, and using their usual computers, etc., etc. So at the end of the meeting, I asked them, look, very good discussion, but what were those 3 guys doing? He said that, look, before you came into the room, half an hour before, we just gave your name to IBM Watson, Ganesh Natarajan. IBM Watson told us that at the end of 8 minutes, this man will get bored. Okay, he will start looking at his mobile phone. Full behavioral pattern of how I would behave in the next 60 minutes. And they showed it to me. I was shocked. My God, somebody can, even my wife doesn't know me as well as IBM Watson does after half an hour of analysis. What's it doing? It's taking all my social media feed. What do I do on Facebook? What do I do on Twitter? What do I do on WhatsApp? And forming a psychographic image of myself, which is being fed. But I said, you still haven't answered the question what those 3 people were doing. He says, those 3 people, every time we asked you a question and you gave an answer, they would feed it back to Watson. And within 5 minutes on all their mobile phones, they were getting what new questions to ask this guy based on new intelligence gathered from the answering. You see this? Fantastic. And this is just, they were showing it to me an example. Imagine if you're running a factory where you want output to go up by 25%, and you are literally feeding information back as and when it happens, real time. Imagine the kind of prescriptive improvements you can make. So that's this is I call it the toy shop of digital. That if any smart CEO or manufacturing head can have access to these toys and puts it together well, the result is magic. So basically what are we saying? Connectivity, data empowerment, automation like robots, etc., etc. Use as much of emerging technologies like virtual reality, additive manufacturing as possible. integrate across the value chain, which is your SAP, Oracle, ERPs, integrated with all the new systems and new business models. So in a sense, I'm moving to the last part, which is so how do we put this together? So if you look at implications for manufacturing companies, the first thing you have to do is do an assessment. Where are you in the digital ecosystem? How do you boost the performance or improve output? We just talked about that. How do you do data-driven decision making, like the IBM Watson example? And finally, the customer. How do you focus on what the customer needs today, may need tomorrow, or we can make him need tomorrow? Who is the world's biggest example of a company producing products which nobody had asked for? There was no demand, but they still made it and were very successful. Anybody? Apple. Think of Apple, okay? The iPod, nobody needed an iPod. We had a Walkman. Look at the iPhone. Look at iTunes. And there is a famous quote by the gentleman who started Apple, Steve Jobs, who says that you can never trust the customer to know what she wants. Now, if any of us said it, it will be the most arrogant statement on the planet, because we're all expected to know what the customer wants. But Steve Jobs said, I will create products that will so wow the customer that she will automatically come and buy it. That's what's happening with Apple. And of course, Samsung and everybody else today. So the point I'm making is, focus on a customer's future expectation is almost as important as servicing the existing customer. So one case study, and I won't spend time on this. I mean, this is actually in northern India, in Gurgaon, one of the big auto component manufacturing companies. So they have now IoT or Internet of Things across the shop floor. So they manage what they call overall equipment effectiveness. So everything is tracked. Like I said about the Watson, literally on a real-time basis, they're tracking, they're predicting the performance of the machines, predicting the requirement of material. The whole thing is fully integrated. And the benefit is that, look, they capture data everywhere. All events of any problems on the shop floor are captured, transmitted to the cloud, used for their information, etc. And they have completely customized dashboards, which means that predictive maintenance, materials managers, sales managers, everybody has real-time access to what is going on. And like this, I mean, we are now working on 4 or 5 very large examples of, including in construction, in OEM manufacturing, etc. And the basic premise is that if you use some of these technologies, and I'm coming back to Industry 4.0, you should be expecting all this. You should be expecting a 10 to 20% reduction in the cost of quality on the shop floor, a 3 to 5% or maybe more increase in productivity, reduction of machine downtime, reduction in inventory holding costs, increase of productivity, reduction of maintenance cost, forecasting accuracy, and much, much more customer satisfaction. And it doesn't matter whether your customer is another business, you're in the B2B business, or in B2C, which is business to consumers. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can definitely track, if pollution is one of your parameters, certainly you should look at that. In fact, sustainable companies are all about that. You're absolutely. I know that's true, sir, but I mean, but you should not go on only those examples. You go to GE in Chakan and Pune, you'll find that environment control is part of what they do. So that, I mean, depends on what your parameters are. You're absolutely right, but I mean, it's a very important point. So what do you think goes wrong in India? Why is India Industry 4.0, especially in smaller, medium companies, still not developing? Any thoughts? Why do we attend seminars like this and not implement? Yeah.
Sir, maybe that India or Indian exports depends on customer development. If customer says that we need this, it is like customized solution are given.
Yeah, but the customer doesn't say that don't make it efficiently. You can still make it efficiently with Industry 4.0. Correct.
When we see Indian companies, they do every time they're exporting something new.
You should talk to Mr. Sharma separately after this conference, because he is actually manufacturing new things every month, but he is one of the better users of Industry 4.0, because he knows that he has to use it for quickly training new people, optimizing what spares he keeps, because you're absolutely right, there are new things that he's doing all the time. So it's a question of adapting to what your customer demand is. So the problems we are seeing in Industry 4.0 is, first of all, of course, especially if you look at small companies, okay, in India, it's a difficult labor market. We all know the problems of labor laws, etc., etc. There's a large base of legacy machines, because some people have got CNCs on the shop floors, which don't kind of communicate with older generation machines, so on and so forth. Very high percentage of SMEs, which is good and bad. It's good because there is a lot of entrepreneurship, but it's bad because it's very difficult. In fact, we're now working on a big project for the Kirloskar Group in Pune, which is integrating their entire supplier base into Industry 4.0, because they as an OEM want to make that happen. But it's not happening often enough. Technically skilled, when we talked about skills earlier, is not there. But the good part is that there is a very low cost of communication technologies. And thanks to the huge competition with Geo and everything else, the communication technology is going to keep coming down. So we have to take advantage of that. So going forward, I think what will happen in Industry 4.0, which is what we are doing in 5F World, and I'm sure Deloitte and so many other people are looking at as opportunity, is how do you adapt an Industry 4.0 solution for India? Don't worry about what GE does or what ZTE does or what Huawei does in China, but can we make an Industry 4.0 solution work for India? Can we leapfrog? If you remember, there was a time when the gentleman called Sam Pitroda, created this ISD, PSD, the PCO revolution. But where India really leapfrogged was on mobile phones. Today over 1.2 billion mobile phones in this country. Similarly, we have an opportunity to leapfrog the traditional manufacturing execution systems, SCADA systems, etc., by really implementing Industry 4.0. But we have to think about it innovatively, not copy what America is doing, but look at it what works for our own industry and our own equipment. That's the idea. Custom developed, low cost solutions. Because in India is all about Sundar Sasta Tikau. We don't want somebody to come in and say, we have done this in Germany, so you have to do it here. We have to see what works for our own industry. Cluster driven, in fact, a lot of the work that CII is doing today, for instance, is building industry clusters, having common agendas, common problems, and making that happen. And a much higher role of conventional telecom, smartphones, etc. So how can you make everything mobile ready? Because today it's a fact that everybody has access to a smartphone or a character phone. How can we serve up all that data, information, integration on the mobile phone? These are the some of the comments we get from Indian entrepreneurs who say we don't have the management bandwidth. I've heard of Industry 4.0, but it's too complicated for me. We don't understand technology. That's why I may try to make digital technology very, very simple. We have concerns about privacy and data security. Even before we start worrying about data. Okay, so that's always a problem. Or, very simply, we just don't know where to begin. In fact, I'm getting this response from people all over the country saying that, look, how do I start? It seems like a good idea. Everything I talked about, the improvements, is great. But what is the way of getting started? So the one point I want to make, and I'll come to the last part of my session, is not doing anything is not an answer. We cannot assume कि ये भी एक नया fad है, ये चला जाएगा. It's not going to go away because digital is here to stay. And unless we are able to adapt to the level we need it for our companies, for our factories, for our entities, we will probably be left behind. So that's something we are looking at. So if you look at the roadmap, as I call it, for Industry 4.0, we have to understand that there are three things to look for. One is we have to look at digital technologies. I've talked enough about that. We have to look at innovation. How do we innovatively use commonly available technology, but apply it in our context so that whatever is our biggest pain point or our biggest problem, we are solving that through the technology. The third and most important in our country is people. Because for every great idea you have, there is somebody sitting out there who says, "Yahan to kaam nahi karega ye." Okay, it's a tendency. We say it in Hindi in India. I'm sure they say it in Mandarin in China. Nothing is different anywhere. Human beings are human beings. But how do we overcome the people resistance to change barrier? And I think you just take technology, it won't work. Just say we have to be the greatest new thing, innovation, it won't work. Just tell people karna hai, it's not going to work. But putting these three together is what makes the Industry 4.0 magic happen. So I'll leave you with a couple of slides and then we can answer any other questions you may have, which is in our own experience in the last 2 years, how are the successful companies really approaching Industry 4.0? The first is what you see there, which is assessment. In all the parameters I mentioned to you, we need to have an honest assessment of where are we. Are we ready for people culture? Are we ready with new ideas? Do we have a thinking? If you remember, I asked that little quiz and all of you gave me descriptive analytic solutions. Do we even know that if we had better data, how could we be more predictive and prescriptive? So all these are important aspects to know. How is it done? Typically, once you assess where you are, you must get all your people into what we call workshops. Get workshops for salespeople, for inventory planners, for production planners, for maintenance people, for customers, to say, hey, how do we collaboratively use Industry 4.0? That's the customized workshops phenomenon that I'm talking about. Implement proof of concepts. I mean, anybody who thinks that, look, I'll suddenly take a big factory and transform it using Industry 4.0 is asking for trouble. Choose one proof of concept. It could be in maintenance, it could be in simulated training, it could be in inventory management, and make sure that you're comfortable that it's working. Then scale, because then when you look at Industry 4.0 acceleration, that is all about taking those experiences, building a full-fledged digital transformation roadmap, and going all the way to one business area or one business function and expanding to others. So basically what are we saying? Assessment, a lot of training and engagement and discussions amongst all the stakeholders, the proof of concept that you will define, and then scaling it, etc. So this, I would say that the process of 1, 2, and 3, you should try and do in about 3 to 4 months, so that at the end of it, you are ready with a proof of concept and you're ready to scale. Assessment, I mean, this is just a sense of, it's a very recent case of what we once did. So you look at assessment saying digital manufacturing, product lifecycle management, what is happening using digital technology for operations management, shop floor connectivity, manufacturing intelligence, supply chain, which is important. On that side, the people side, skills and capability, culture, is our leadership walking the talk in terms of Industry 4.0, and of course, network and security. So once you do an assessment of where you are on all these parameters, you'll automatically know where the weak link is and what you should address in your POCs or your workshops, etc., etc. And if you do this, my own experiences, and I'm not kind of prescribing, but I'm saying most of the cases we are seeing, not only in India, but also in Europe and America, are people who are able to take this comprehensive approach are more likely to succeed than somebody who just says, oh, my boss, the MD has said we have to do Industry 4.0, karte hain. It's not going to work. So we have to take those imperatives, saying it has to be the CEO's agenda, or it has to be the top boss's agenda. Nothing happens without leadership putting their weight behind. It has to be to make very conscious efforts at change management happen. And there has to be a digital culture that pervades the organization. So let me just conclude by saying it can be done. As Yatindra rightly said in the beginning, even in the IT industry, I remember in the early days, I still remember in 1994, there was a gentleman called Devang Mehta from Gujarat who actually started NASSCOM. So Devang and I were traveling in some parts of I think it was in Germany, and we were talking about Indian IT. And that time, as I said, it was a very small industry. And people said, but India, we have heard of only about this, magicians and the Indian rope trick. That was India. Snake charmers. And from there, if you look at where we are today, where 55% of IT market share is held by Indian companies, it's a fantastic transformation. Today we worry about Make in India, because we're saying Make in India is a great slogan, but is it really happening? It'll happen. It'll happen when large companies, the middle tier and the SMEs are able to adopt something like Industry 4.0 and make it happen. So as you can see, I'm an optimist. I believe it can be done. And I do a lot of these sessions to just motivate people. Ki bhai kuch karo. We have to do it for our country and we have to do it for Industry 4.0. So thank you very much, and questions.
Excellent talk with fresh ideas and the kind of landscape what he has charted out. It is showing huge promise, but at the same time, I think it requires good amount of homework and also visualizing future with hope, confidence and courage. It doesn't help anybody if you do not have courage to try something which is unknown or which is new, and you are the first time user in your business, but somebody else has already done it. So point is that what Ganesh said, there are some of the very, very important observations what he did. In future, there will be only two type of companies, quick or dead. What Bill Gates wrote many, many years ago in his book is now a reality, that is business at speed of thought. That's what digital economy will drive at. Thought of customer, Likewise, he talked about customer experience or your strategic thought of managing your business, interpreting your data, and finding a better solution. All this thing will link with and create a kind of information flow, will create a system where you will be managing business in a much smarter manner than what we have been doing today. So that what is the future. Future is exciting, but at the same time, excitement is always linked with lurking fear. And that fear we have to drive it out, and we have to be bold in our business, and that what is required by SME of Indian industry. We have to get out of the shell which has been created by our politicians, where they always look at small and medium enterprises with lot of element of pity. Oh, we are doing this, we are doing that. I think we have to shake up that, and we have to decide to grow despite of government policies, government support, whatever it is. If it comes your way, well and good. Otherwise, you should look for your own solutions. And that is where I think Industry 4.0 will help you to scale on a much higher level. With that hope, as Ganesh is absolutely optimistic, may I request all of you to give him a big round of applause. Thank you, Ganesh, and on behalf of everybody, we are presenting you a small token as a memory of this interaction. Thank you very much.